welcome to another episode of Decentralounge, brought to you by GlobalStake, your institutional, truly decentralized, self-owned and managed SOC 2 compliant bare metal staking service provider. And today we are excited to have a wonderful guest on the show, Fabian Vogelsteller, who is a Web3 and blockchain pioneer and the co-founder of the Layer-1 LUKSO. As a trailblazer in the blockchain space, Fabian is renowned for his pivotal contribution as the inventor of the ERC-20 token standard, which has fundamentally transformed the Ethereum ecosystem by enabling the proliferation of tokens on its platform and initiating the ICO wave in the DeFi movement. He also helped build the official Ethereum wallet, the first decentralized Web3 browser, and tools like Web3.js, the most used JavaScript library in the blockchain space today. He's also the co-founder of the Layer-1 Blockchain LUKSO, where he continues to push the boundaries of blockchain innovation. Fabian and his co-founder, Marjorie Hernandez, created LUKSO as they saw a gap in the space between identification, virtualization, and tokenization. Fabian, we are excited to have you on and to further discuss your journey and what you're building at LUKSO. So let's just start off the conversation by getting into a little bit about your history. What fascinated you about this space and what really brought you to Web3?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Blockchain has been like a surprise for me in 2013 when I learned about Bitcoin in the early days. And for me, like the whole idea of decentralization, the fact that you can build systems where no one is in charge except you yourself, ideally, right? Or the people you trust, and not even an administrator or somebody who runs the infrastructure can control things. That was fascinating. And that took quite some years to really get into the nitty-gritties of this. The first years from 2013 to basically 2015, Ethereum was only about like transferring money, right? I mean, it was all about like the coin and the amount you could send. And then with Ethereum specifically, things became like, programmable. What has happened, fun fact, the most things that were used were then again monetarily programmable, but it's now moving towards social. It's now moving towards things that are beyond just the monetary aspect of blockchain, and that's really what excites me actually the most.
Very interesting. I'm kind of curious to transition from Ethereum to specifically LUKSO. Can you kind of share like what inspired you to co-found LUKSO, and maybe what was the specific gap or opportunity in the space that made you say, hey, this is what we're going to build that's unique? Because as a quick primer, a lot of people that listen to the show are institutions that are just entering the space. So when they hear the words another layer one, they always go like, well, why? What purpose does it solve? So perfect opportunity. Like how is LUKSO different? I would assume universal basic profiles.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is. First off, we haven't solved the scalability issue in blockchain in general, right? So, there is a max capacity what the network can hold right now, and Ethereum it's around like 1 to 2 million transactions a second. Other networks have sometimes more, but they're also less decentralized. Others have less. Bitcoin, for example, is a bit slower on that end. But on the end, like there's a few things, because we have this inherent limitation with blockchain, and there's no perfect solution yet, right? I mean, there's these ideas about scaling through layer twos, but that means you lose composability. That means these smart contracts between these different layer twos can't talk to each other anymore. So you kind of have layer two is almost like having even more chains, just now glued to another chain. But the thing is, and the main reason was, in order to really like introduce blockchain to mainstream, introduce it to a new audience, to a new user, we actually need to change the smart contract standards. We need to change the building blocks that people are using to build applications and the way we interact with blockchain in general. And that's kind of like a process that has been quite slow. I mean, in fact, like you said, ERC-20, when I proposed ERC-20 in 2015, it kind of kicked off this wave of ICOs and DeFi and everything else. But there was no really evolution anymore. Everything tried to be backwards compatible because there was already the network effect that happened. People already built wallets a certain way, apps a certain way, protocols a certain way. Now they are all bound by ERC-20. But ERC-20 was like made up by Vitalik and a few guys of us in the early days, without that there was a lot of thinking that went into this, obviously, because it was just a few months old, the network. And So basically people run with the first kind of thing that just came in a way, which is good. It needed to be at the time. But if you really think through, like should your account actually work? Should you just store your things on a private key, or should there be more than that, right? A smart contract account. How should your tokens work to improve the way they can interact with protocols, and how do you attach information to a token or to an NFT? What kind of building blocks do we really need? And we thought out these building blocks and build out the tools. And one core piece is a smart contract account. It's in fact like the first standardized smart contract, abstract smart contract account, how you can call that. And we basically built them out. But in order to introduce them, a new network is necessary, because then you get the network effect, where everybody who builds on LUKSO, for example, is using universal profiles, is using NFT 2.0, is using the new token standards. And by doing that, they're now building on the right foundations that are far more sophisticated, that are more thought out, so that people can build more interesting things, more user-friendly things, more automation and more flexibility that you just simply couldn't introduce on Ethereum or on Polygon, because you're limited to the network effect that happened already like 5 years ago. Hence why even on Ethereum right now, there is a lot of thinking about smart contract accounts. And the gasless idea 4337 has happened, and now there's ideas about modular smart contract accounts, but it's very in the early stage. And then you have a very hard time, like really like breaking through this network effect and trying to make everybody move towards a new type of account. And even on the way these standards are built right now, they're always thinking about wallets. Like they're thinking about as an account equals a wallet. But in LUKSO, we're taking it one step further. We're thinking about accounts as profiles, because on the end, everything you have in the internet, right, is basically a profile. It's your internet account. No matter what platform you use, there's always a name and a face attached to it, or in most cases at least. And making your profile, your account, and your wallet at the same time, that's what can be done if you have blockchain. You can now unfold decentralized social media, but also DeFi, also transactions across the world, and also things that have and contain reputation, and basically can do all kinds of things that have to do with everything and everyday things we do in the internet, while being on blockchain, while having self-sovereignty, the ability to really control your own things, and the ability to actually have proper social interactions as well. And I think going forward, then we see really this shift towards a decentralized future, where you have DAOs and communities and new ways of how people organize themselves, because they have now a face on chain, and they have a face. And in order to really get this, LUKSO was kind of the way to go. A new network, a new L1 was the way to go to get to these new standards that we are having today.
That's wildly fascinating. It makes a lot of sense, because dare I say to all the ETH maxis that are overhearing this right now, just because you're first doesn't mean you're necessarily going to win. I'm not calling Ethereum MySpace by any circumstance, but what you're doing makes a lot of sense, because they're so far behind in regards to technology and things such as your former counterpart, Gavin Wood, creating Polkadot, you yourself now creating LUKSO, like actually trying to move the technology forward versus being held back. Quick question before, I know Ryan has a couple very detailed questions he'd like to ask you, but so with universal profiles, how do you foresee governance being utilized within the actual LUKSO space?
How governance is used, or how governments are using it, or
governance in regards to people being able to actually like vote on chain for certain proposals, etc.
I mean, the network itself works like Ethereum. So the governance here is through whoever stakes. You know, stakers are. I mean, you guys are a staking service, so there's the Dencun hard fork coming up on LUKSO, probably around June, July. You guys need to upgrade your nodes if you want to be part of that, obviously. So, I mean, governance right now on that level is done through the validators, obviously. But because you now have on-chain profiles and on-chain accounts that basically do transactions, you have a lot more social visibility. That means when people are doing things, if they're interacting with a certain smart contract, or they're forming a DAO, or they're doing things, you can see who they are. It's not just random addresses you could maybe identify, but this could be people that you really start to recognize. even though you might not know who they really are behind it, but you start to relate to them. They gain reputation because you recognize them and see them over and over in different places. And through that, at some point, I think some form of DAO structure could be formed that like governs certain decisions long term. But the whole governance system of a blockchain itself is quite in its infancy. I mean, internet computers trying it with their neural network kind of idea. Ethereum is still the old way. There's one thing I also want to say towards other chains and kind of like moving forward on Ethereum. On the end, the standards that we build, they will work on other EVM chains as well. And we actually will also introduce them to Ethereum and other places, because in my opinion, what we have built is the most sophisticated smart contract account to date. And that will benefit other chains as well. But if you want to have the ability to have all of the new standards in one place that are built to work together in concert and in harmony, then you want to do it on LUKSO. Because yes, you can use a universal profile on Ethereum, but you won't, people might not care about the profile image, or maybe there's no transaction relay service that works with it right now, but you can use it for all the cool other features like permissions and so on. So it really depends. You're better off in the ecosystem where this grows, but it will also benefit others down the road. And Ethereum right now has a very strong need for a proper smart contract account. I mean, there's early ideas, but they are very much in the beginning, and we built 5 years on that already. It's already all done and pretty much figured out to a very high degree of what is a good smart contract account.
One of the things that we kind of glossed over in the intro, and now just hearing you speak for the last 10 minutes, Fabian, is that people might not know that you have an art background. We see in Web3 where people have very meandering paths that take them to places in life that they wouldn't necessarily expect. And just listening to you, it's very evident two things. One, tons of divergent thinking, right? And I think this is very strong in many people who have art backgrounds. And also the way that you think very globally and holistically, trying to put together everything in a seamless sort of pastiche, if you will, of all these different pieces. So tell us a little, and one of the things I know that when you designed LUKSO, it was really to, for creators, for other artists, for people who have that creative urge and want to make something sustainable long-term, whether it's maybe these phygital goods and things that LUKSO is built out for. Let's dig deep into that a little bit. Like, what was the original vision for LUKSO as a layer one? I mean, we've alluded to some of the pieces that you put in place, but it's evident that a lot of this divergent thinking and thinking about things globally has led to the creation of LUKSO in its current form.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, on the end, it really came out of the idea of making blockchain accessible to everyone, right? And what better way to do that is than using things that have to do with lifestyle and social and creators, where there's actually a need, right? In the creative industries, right? Like we basically have the problem that there's a lot of middlemen, and creators mostly don't make the money that they could make on their artwork, be it a musician, be it even a YouTuber, all kind of like content creators of that sorts, and then also the graphic creators. They have a hard time making money, and blockchain is this ultimate tool where you can connect the creator with the one who wants to have it, or the one who uses it or consumes it in some way. And you can create this bond and this connection, for example, between an artist, a musician, and his community, his fan base, and so on. But at the same time, it's also very inherently social. And the internet is social by default. And what is missing right now in the internet is the transaction layer to our social interactions. You can't easily send people money just like that. And you would have to go to him and ask him, hey, are you using Venmo or PayPal or whatever? Or it's very complicated. We don't really have fully decentralized reputation systems, right? It's all based on whatever platform you're on. If you're on Instagram, you have your followers there, and on Twitter, you have another followers. Followers don't necessarily mean that you actually have a lot of followers, because a lot of this can be fake as well. So we have a lot of intransparency, or it's a bit arbitrary, let's say. So that can be unified and protocolized on a decentralized network. That's number one. I mean, actually, I studied media design, but I was always I started out as being a web developer. Since I'm 7, I have a computer, so I was always kind of like playing around and in the early days, I was trying to make the computers run with the auto exit but and the config sys, and then I was actually very quickly bored playing them, so I worked on the next game to make it run. And then I got into web design, and what I liked about web design is because I could completely design the whole thing. So I designed all my websites myself, and then coded them as well. So I kind of like, I think I have this combination between designing and coding, understanding both the intricacies of the technology and have this design mindset. And I think, and that really then merged with, blockchain when I got into Bitcoin and later Ethereum, and had my hand into a lot of the standards that, are used on Ethereum. In fact, right now we have the Ethereum provider is basically the way how your MetaMask talks to your D app. That connection, I standardized this in 2016. And this is now being superseded by this new wallet provider standard called 6963, ERP-6963. And it took like just about 7 years to get. Oh no, wait, 2016, yeah, 6 years to get there, to now improve that. And it just shows that once you set standards, they go a long way. And they're also very slow to change. That's exactly why getting it right in the beginning is extremely important. And hence why a new network is necessary to introduce such new standards. That on the end will flock to other networks as well, but a new network is necessary. Also, given that you have cheaper transaction fees because the network initially it gives another big space of resources, right, for people to build and explore.
Are there any upcoming like projects or partnerships? Because I know LUKSO talks a lot about fashion partnerships and going down that route that you're very excited about, that LUKSO's getting ready to do.
So I mean, the partnerships that we are focusing on, and I mean, obviously there is some partnerships that have been done in the past with DMAT, the dematerialized, the digital fashion marketplace that initially built on LUKSO in the early days already. There's some things ongoing. I'm not 100% sure about that. We are focusing, from the LUKSO side, we are focusing really on the tech partnerships, integrations into the network, oracles, RPC providers, on-ramps, basically things that people need to build, because that network will grow through people building, especially on those new standards. And that will then create the applications that you couldn't build somewhere else because you're missing your smart contract account and you're missing the features you have on these new NFTs. For example. So tech partnerships is where we have spent most of our money and integrations in the last 2 years, basically. And there's a lot of people watching us. I mean, we have been very visible in the fashion space. Digital fashion became a thing. NFTs became a thing over the years when we were there. They are watching us, but there's also still a lot of like groundwork that need to be done in order to really make it mass attractive. Let's call it like that. Because you want to have an easy in for people, and everything is released now. It's out there. The standards are there, but we only tapped into maybe 2% of the features that you can build now just on Unifies profiles alone, right? And we need to build a few more things. Other people need to build a few more things. So this becomes very obvious and easy to use, because if you're a brand on the end, like you mostly don't have a massive tech team, right? You just need things to exist that you can just click together or get your marketing team to use in some way. And those things, they will be built, and they need to be built over time. And then big creators, small creators and big brands can very easily come in and do things on LUKSO. And it would be the best platform for that. It would be the best blockchain for that, because it's culturally completely, in that direction. If you look at our community, if you look at what people are doing, if you just look at the amount of NFTs that have been created and the quality of those, and this is just 3 months, into the first marketplace. I mean, they're very much set up for this kind of culture space that's coming.
I will say, you mentioned NFTs. Can you talk very briefly about the actual NFTs you guys have been built on the LUKSO platform? And what I mean specifically is not a link that goes to a JPEG, but like actual images are being put on the actual LUKSO blockchain. Like I'm butchering the way they should be described, but if you could touch on that.
I mean, on the end, these NFTs were built by other people. In fact, I think what you're referring to is Burn Pics, which is quite interesting. It's a fascinating NFT because it was first off created by the lead Go Ethereum developer of Ethereum. I worked with him back in the day. I worked at Ethereum, and actually he was hired after me, Peter. And he built this fractal algorithm into the EVM so that you can generate a fractal image, a very low pixel fractal image in a smart contract itself. 7 years ago, I think he did that. And now in LUKSO, he actually launched his first NFT and his only NFT ever, which is this fractal. And he did it on LUKSO because in order to make this fractal, you deploy the fractal, and then you need to refine it to make it more and more detailed with different iterations. So you send the transaction to iterate and make it more detailed. You refine it, is how he calls it. And you need a chain that's very cheap to do that. So what's happening right now, a lot of people are basically deploying these or generating these fractals and then refining them to make them have, millions of iterations. Actually the top ones have 80 million iterations. And basically, once the chain gets more busy, once the gas fees grow because there's more activity, those refinements will cost you millions of dollars to do. So they're only possible right now, and people are doing this. They're kind of really like Bitcoin mining the BurnPix NFTs, and your servers are processing them. Funny enough, generating these images, right? And down the road, you can never do that again. You have to buy them if you want to have one. And they are full on chain because the fractal is actually generated by the smart contract and returned as an SVG by the smart contract itself. In my opinion, probably one of the most interesting NFT art projects out there, and a real on-chain NFT, because it's literally generated by the smart contract, and calculated in the smart contract as a fractal. That's literally using our blockchain a lot right now. Which is, there's a whole group of people who just do this all day long, refining BurnPix. So this is fascinating, and it's also really possible because of our new standards. So LSP8 allows you to do these standards already. They allow these new kind of ways of dynamic NFTs and updatable metadata and all of this kind of stuff, which is not so easy possible when you use the old Ethereum standards, for example.
That's so freaking cool.
Yeah. This is the first NFT, by the way, I ever collected, really, because it really feels like a true real NFT. I have not really collected any NFTs before. I also wanted to wait for having actually a profile where I can put them on and I will find them again, not like somewhere hidden in my 50 MetaMask account somewhere, but I know this is my profile and this is my stuff, yeah. So I needed to build for all of this before I could collect.
Well, it seems like you guys are definitely firing on all cylinders, and you've built out a lot of really cool features already. This is the first time I've heard about this fractal NFT, and now I'm curious about acquiring one myself and maybe make it part of my profile and just get in there and play around with the LUKSO blockchain. What's next for you guys? I mean, clearly there's a very bright future ahead. There's probably a lot on your roadmap that you're already currently thinking about. What are some of these other things you talked about? The tools are there. It's just a matter of getting users over to actually start experimenting like some of these early folks are doing with these burn NFTs. But what's big on the roadmap? What's coming down the pike for all of LUKSO and the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I mean, it has to be really important to be understood that LUKSO is a decentralized ecosystem. In fact, it's probably only one of the few chains that have been fully launched decentralized. So we're not running a single validator, neither in the foundation nor in our company. It's fully run by people like you. Fun fact, right? It's actually only run by people like you and home stakers and others. And it was started that way and it's running that way. And the same basically goes for, if we want to grow LUKSO, right? There's so much a single team can do. Obviously, it's not about one team building everything. It's about getting developers in to understand these new standards and then build the things that make all of this very interesting and really, really popular down the road. So what we are focusing on, and that's also something that's happening in the next few weeks and months, is basically to decentralize the current LUKSO team and putting this into its different entities. So I can focus, for example, with the LUKSO tech team under a new name that will be called Universal Everything, onto building and continue building out the standards, the tooling. That's, for example, the browser extension and the mobile app. We will build a decentralized social network platform fully built on LUKSO and universal profiles and everything else. We were building developer tools or services that allow for developer tools. For example, on Ethereum, you have Infura and Alchemy and other players that give you kind of like RPC endpoints and other things. We will build that for LUKSO specifically because there's these new standards. So things can be done differently, and you can need different indexers and different ways of data, how you collect them and how you return them, because you want to search for profiles, for example, and NFTs and other things. So we're building out all of these services that developers can build faster by using existing middleware and APIs that we built. There's also a name system coming. I mean, it's basically based on ENS on Ethereum, but it's changed for LUKSO using the new NFT standards that allows everybody to have a unique name. If you have a unique profile, you want a unique name as well for that, right? And there's a lot of like tools and other things that we build along the way to really grow the developer ecosystem. And one important part also, educate people about this new tech and the new standards. There's a lot to learn because we invented a lot, and that needs a lot of education. And that's not like a from today to tomorrow kind of thing. That's from like from today in a year kind of thing, that people will start to understand these standards better and why they are relevant and why they are, better than what your current account is. And then what you can build as a developer, right? Inspiring people to build the next D app, and the next ecosystem on blockchain, basically.
Fantastic. Fabian, it was a pleasure having you on today. For those of you that are listening that are very interested, go to luxo.network. But Fabian, is there any other place that people should be aware of, that they should research LUKSO or to connect with you and your team if they're interested in building on LUKSO?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one very important place, which is universalprofile.cloud. Universalprofile.cloud is kind of the place where you can create a profile, you can see what profiles are doing, you can look what people are, what they're doing on chain, what they're collecting. There's also a marketplace, universal.page, that I would recommend checking out because you see all the NFTs and the burn pics and everything else. And from there you go to Twitter, you go to LUKSO_IO Twitter, and from there you find the whole community. Another cool place also to check out is Common Ground. So cg.app, which is basically the Discord of Web3, and the LUKSO community is very strong in there. It's literally all the LUKSO community is in Common Ground. That's where they do all their NFT projects, shilling, or whatever else they do. Those are the most important places. Yeah.
Awesome. Love it. For those of you that are listening, everything is going to be linked in the description for ease of reference. Fabian, really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you again for all you've contributed to the space and all you continue to contribute to the space. Thank you again for coming on. For those of you that are listening, we will be back with more episodes this season. Thank you and have a great day. We'll see you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.